Hi, this is Glenda. Well, our new crafter's had a bit of a mishap. She thought she'd upgrade some of her tools, so she found a local craft shop and was wandering around, and they had a clearance bin, and she picked up an embossing folder. It was only a couple of dollars. It seemed like an absolute bargain, and she didn't realize you need a $100 machine to actually use it. So can we do anything to help out our new crafter? Yes. So I thought this was a chance to say a bit of a buyer beware. If you are shopping in clearance bins, make sure whatever you're buying is not part of a bigger system. I was in a craft shop one day and they were telling us how a lady had come in and she had this punch and she didn't know how to use it, and somebody had sold her a punch that was part of a bigger system and she didn't have the holder for it, and it was useless without the holder. You often see refills for things in clearance bins and yeah, sort of obsolete things. So although I am a great advocate of shopping from the clearance bin, you know, do be careful of what you're buying, and if you're not sure, ask somebody, because you know, if it's a little thing like this, it's not a big deal. If you've just still spent $10 or so on something out of a clearance bin that you can't use, you may as well have burnt it. So, you know, here's a couple of cards, and I'll get into that in a second. You know, I think some things our new crafter might consider if she's going to upgrade some of her tools, because, you know, a lot of them she just scrounged around the house to get in the first place. One thing I've never regretted getting was my Tim Holtz ruler. Because it's got a metal edge on one side and these grid lines, and hopefully I can demonstrate that in the card as to one of the reasons why I like it so much, but that could be a good upgrade. A Wink of Stella pen. I love the clear one. I've got a couple of others as well, but the clear one I really love, and it adds some bling without going overboard and very simply. So I don't know if it's showing up, but there's sparkle on the lady's hair, and but that will set you back about $9 in a craft shop in Australia. So, you know, it's not a cheap purchase, but it's one that I like if you want a little bit of a treat for our new crafter. A pair of decorative scissors. Those who've been crafting for a long time almost inevitably will have a pair of these tucked away in a drawer somewhere, possibly a whole set of them. For a new crafter, these are a nice easy way to get a pretty edge, and there's various videos around on how to use them. So that's another fairly cheap and useful thing for somebody who doesn't have all the tools. If I was going to buy one punch, I would look for something that was difficult to do any other way. So a decorative label, I think, is a really useful punch to start with. This one does that. There's all sorts of ones around. I like the EK Success punches, especially this new style that stores so easily. So, you know, something that's difficult, but something that I grab all the time, because you know, I put sentiments on, and sometimes I've messed up my stamping, so if I've got a decorative label, I can restamp it and punch it out and put it on top of whatever I've done wrong. So even if you weren't originally planning on putting your sentiments separately, it's a good way to do it. So I think that's a good starting punch. And the other thing I find I reach for a lot is plain coloured cardstock, and you can get these packs wherever it opens, you know, of assorted colours. In Australia we can pick them up in Big W and other places too, and sometimes you see them on special, and just good basic colours. This one's neutrals, but you can also get brights, and then you can get more specialised where they're sort of browns or greens or whatever. But some coloured cardstock I find a very good staple to have on hand. So they're the things perhaps our new crafter might like to add this week. So we'll have a go at some cards. Well, first of all, I'll show you the three things I came up with that you can do with your embossing folder without an embossing machine. The first thing you do is raid the kitchen for the rolling pin. It may seem obvious, and I had heard of this working before, but I've never had a reason to try it before. So actually I'll move that one out of the way. The trick to doing it without a machine is to spray your card first. So just some water, spray both sides, and mine might end up a bit purple because I haven't really washed my folder as well as I could have. But we're just going to put it in, rolling pin, reasonable pressure, but you don't have to be Arnie to do it. The trick is just to hold it still and roll it. And yes, I did get purple on it. I should have cleaned it or grabbed another one, but I'm hoping you can see that that embossing is quite clear. You can tell that that's embossed, and that's exactly how I did this, and then put some colour over it to emphasise it a bit more. And of course you've got to let it dry in between because I have wet it. But I mean, it's not as deep as with a machine, but you can certainly do it, and if you don't have a machine of any kind, you don't have to feel left out of the whole embossing thing. So the next thing you can do with it, especially if you've had it reasonably clean, you want to take the side that's got the raised parts. So in this case it's that side there, and put your card in. And I'm just going to, now it's dry this time, so it's not going to emboss. It just doesn't do it without embossing, but it's just to help press it in a little bit, because what we then do is raid the kids' crayons, or in this case the grandchildren, and you can probably guess what I'm about to do, but we're just going to rub over it, the old crayon rubbing that they have been doing probably for centuries. You might want to do it in a prettier colour than this, but this is the one the kids had already unwrapped, and it shows up well. So a crayon rub is the other thing. And the last thing to show you, you can do this on either side of your folder. You'll get a different result depending which side you do it. In fact, I might do both sides and see how it goes to show you rather than me doing it twice. We're just going to take our little ink pad, cover it. You want a fairly dark colour. When I did it in a pale colour, if I can find my sample. Yeah, when I did it a light pink, and it barely shows up, which could be the look you want. But if you want something stronger, which is what I've done on this one, we want a darker colour. Ink it up well, preferably not all the fingers. A piece of cardstock. This is not thin paper, it's light cardstock. It's not quite heavy enough to make a card from, although I do. Put it in carefully. Sorry, the battery went flat again. My camera's not enjoying all the work I'm giving it lately. Anyway, yeah, we're rolling our folder. And hopefully the big reveal. We've got this one and the reverse. And then you just wash your folder better than I did with soap and water. So that's the three techniques that I came up with for using your folder. And we'll go ahead and make a card. Okay, to make our card, I've got the card base, and I've just picked out a pretty piece of paper from another one of these $5 paper stacks, which is much more girly than the last one. and I've printed out some pictures from internet, and these are all from the Graphics Fairy, and I'll put a link to her site. I mean, there's many, probably millions of pictures out there on internet. Not all of them are free to use. The Graphics Fairy is a good site because they are free to use. So you know, that it's really hard to find images sometimes because you get so many false links. You know, you search for something in clip art, and you know, you come up with all these fake links that really don't have any clip art at all. It's very annoying. But I used to use clip art, digi images, digi stamps, whatever you want to call them, long before I got into mainstream sort of card making as such, because that's what I had access to. I've always collected clip art, and so, you know, it was a natural sort of thing. But because I used the computer at work, I also felt it was a little bit more work-like. So when I could get into stamps and things, I felt that was more hobby and less work. I know that might sound silly, but anyway, that's just my thinking. So I moved away from using these very often, but they are a nice cheap way if you've got a computer and a printer and internet, which, you know, not everybody does, but I'm figuring if you're watching a YouTube video you probably do. So or, you know, if you're the one helping the new crafter and they don't, maybe you need to print out a sheet for them that they can take away and use or something like that. Because I know especially some of the older ladies in our Papermates group just don't have internet. So it's just something to think about. But it is a good resource when you're starting and your supplies are limited. So I'm going to use an image, which would be good if I actually got around to using it, wouldn't it? So I'm just going to choose this one. Now, you hunt around the house and look for shapes. So I wanted an oval shape, so I found my egg piercer, which is egg shape rather than oval, but nevertheless it's a shape. I've got this Mathomat from school. I freely admit I'm a hoarder. It's got circles, it's got small ovals. It could be a cup, it could be an egg cup. Just think outside the box. The kitchen's a great resource for shapes that you can trace around when you don't have punches and dies and all those tools. So we're going to put our lady in here and trace around it. And I thought I had it locked so I wouldn't prick my finger, which is not an egg. Sorry if my head got in then. Okay, trace around it and grab my scissors, and you can cut this out as whatever shape you've done, but just for something different I want to use the decorative scissors, which is what I've done here to give it a jagged look. And I mean, obviously you get them in scallops and zigzags and whatever. This is just a scroll pattern. So I'm just going to go around my pencil mark. There's my lady ready to go on. Well, ready for the next bit. Here's my impression that I did just before. This obviously is going to be the same principle. I mean, these cards are all essentially the same. It's just you go about it slightly differently for different looks. So to work through what we've got, ribbon, lace, same thing round the middle. I've cut this one with a knife, I've punched that one. This one I've added a little bit of the Wink of Stella pen, and I've put pearls in the corners. This one I've put feathers on. You can get the feathers at the $2 shops, and I love the feathers for this sort of vintage feminine kind of look. The cameo came in a packet of 2. It was $1 less 40% because it was on sale. That then makes that an affordable embellishment that I'm willing to put on a card because it's under 50 cents, and that's sort of almost my guideline. I couldn't even afford to put a 50-cent embellishment on every single card. It would just add up. I make a lot of cards, and that's part of the reason why I think frugally. So, but apart from that, we're looking at virtually the same card. This one I've mounted on brown cardstock. I said I like having coloured cardstock. Well, that's what I've done, and we covered mounting right back at the beginning. So that's essentially where we're at. So I'm going to trim off the edge here, because the folder didn't go quite to the edge of the paper. And then we're just going to tear it, because tearing is a brilliant resource. It costs nothing. You can't go wrong because it's a torn piece of paper. You get a vintage look, different every time, and that's going to go on there like that. Now, because that's a bit bland, we're going to do the same technique that we've been doing all along and get our marker and some water, and this is just a piece of cosmetic sponge, which is nice. They're really fine, and shop around for those, because again the prices vary enormously. But we're just going to give this a bit round the edges. Where it's torn, it's going to seep in more. Then I might just try the grey. A bit of mauve thrown in perhaps. Some more water. And just do the whole thing. So while we've got the lady there, we might put a bit of brown on her. Again, just going around the edges. On this one I went over the whole thing because I've got a brown colour going here. On this one I think I'm going to leave the rest of it white. Clean up the block. And we can start seeing what we've got. I always like to sort of play with what I've got on a card before I commit to it. So I think I'm going to put a bit more lace on this one. This is just my little cheap packet of lace that I got. Maybe a little one this time. And one thing, if you can keep a separate pair of scissors that you only use on fabric, ribbon, things like that, it's really worthwhile doing. So I just keep a separate piece that I hang up out of the way so I don't accidentally grab them for paper, and then they're always nice and sharp. Okay, so we'll start with a double-sided tape. just noticing all the purple on here, and I'm just going to grab a bit of scrap paper. So that I don't get my base card dirty. So we're going to put some lace around here. Sorry, the phone rang and apparently my husband wasn't there to get it, so another break in the filming. Just putting the lace around. And stick it down to the card. At this point you could go around the edges with your ink. Well, actually you could have done it before you put the lace on, but afterthought. I was forgetting that our new crafter has some coloured ink now. And stick this down. Corners right. And put her on foam. Now for a sentiment, I'm just going to use the bottom of my sheet. Where's the block gone? Stamping this on my leftover paper from my ladies, and I know I grabbed the ink that isn't the one that the new crafter has, but hey, we've established she's got black ink, and that's all that matters. So with the Tim Holtz ruler, it's very easy to line up the sentiment because you don't have to stamp it straight this way. Oh, I'm using the plastic edge instead of the metal edge. That's not a very good example. Yeah, you don't have to stamp it straight because you can line it up as you cut it out. So that's one. I used to try and cut these little sentiments with cutters and things, and I've always got them wrong, and I've decided this is the way that works for me. So cut this end off. And we'll just cut a little banner. Fingers to curl the banner, and 1, I might just leave it white. Some more foam tape. And that's the end of my tape. Flat tape on that end. Sorry, making a card from beginning to end is quite slow for you to watch, but because it's the whole new crafter thing, I wouldn't normally sort of put you through that, but just to show each step. So, where do I put my wrinkled Stella pen? I'll just put a little to highlight the frill. Maybe a bit round her hat. It's just a subtle bit of bling. Brings her to life a little bit more. At this point, if we wanted to, we could colour some rhinestones purple and put them on as well. But I've shown that before, so I might just leave it at that. And that's how you can perhaps save a not so wise purchase. And make some feminine cards after all our masculine looking ones. So I hope that's useful, and thank you for watching.